Pharyngeal apparatus has got three derivatives, that is pharyngeal clefts, pharyngeal arches, and pharyngeal pouches, which can be easily remembered by the mnemonic CAP cap, where C stands for pharyngeal clefts, A stands for pharyngeal arches, and P stands for pharyngeal pouches. Pharyngeal clefts are derived from ectoderm, and the muscles and arteries of the pharyngeal arches are derived from mesoderm, and the bones and cartilage of the pharyngeal arches are derived from neural crest, and the pharyngeal pouches are derived from endoderm. Now moving on to the first, that is pharyngeal clefts derivatives, which can be easily remembered by the mnemonic. A cleft has extratemporary cedar obliterated by malleus. That is, the first pharyngeal clefts develops into external auditory meatus, and second through fourth cleft develops into temporary cervical sinuses, which are later obliterated by the second arc mesenchyme. Moving on to the pharyngeal arch derivatives, since a large number of structures are derived from the pharyngeal arch, I have split them into four categories, and the mnemonics stands for them are initially trigeminal makes money, then facial smiles and spins on glosses and stylish crater horn, which was virtually pleasing act. Now moving on to all of them one by one. First, initially trigeminal makes money stands as a mnemonic for the pharyngeal arch derivatives of the first pharyngeal arch. And you should know that all the nerves associated with the pharyngeal arch are not developed from the pharyngeal arch. They actually, the sensory nerves are derived from the neural crest, and the motor nerves are derived from the neuroectoderm, which later grow into the arches. Now moving on to the muscles of the first pharyngeal arch, the muscles largely consist of the letter M, which is as follow: muscles of mastication, which are temporalis, masseter, lateral and medial pterygoids, mylohyoid, anterior belly of digastric, tensor tympani, anterior 2/3 of tongue, tensor valli palatini. And for all cartilage also, the maximum number of the cartilage includes the letter M, which is maxillary process, which includes maxilla and zygomatic bone, mandibular process, which include macal cartilage, mandible, malleus and incus, and spinomandibular ligament. Now moving on to then facial smiles and spins. This mnemonic stands for the derivatives of the second pharyngeal arch, and the nerve involved is the seventh cranial nerve, which is a facial nerve, and the muscles includes muscle of facial expression, and the other muscles includes the later as like stapedius, stylohyoid, platysma, posterior belly of digastric. And for the cartilage also, the cartilage include the letter S, which is stapedius, stapes, styloid process, laser horn of hyoid, stylohyoid ligament. Now moving on to the third pharyngeal arch derivatives, which can be remembered easily by the mnemonic on glossus and stylus crater horn. And the nerve involved is the ninth cranial nerve, which is a glossopharyngeal nerve, and the muscle that is derived from the third pharyngeal arch is a stylopharyngeus muscle, and the cartilage that is derived from the third pharyngeal arch is the greater horn of hyoid. And now moving on to the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches derivatives, this can be remembered by the mnemonic, which was vaguely pleasing act. And the nerve that is involved in the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arch include the 10th cranial nerve, which is a vagus nerve. And for the fourth arch, the nerve involved is the superior laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve, and for the sixth arch, the nerve involved is the recurrent or inferior laryngeal nerve of the vagus nerve. And for the muscles from the fourth arch, the muscle that's derived are pharyngeal constrictors, cricothyroid, levator valli palatini. And for the sixth arch, from the sixth arch, the muscle that are derived are all the intrinsic muscles of larynx except the cricothyroid, and the cartilage that are derived from the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches include arytenoid, cricoid, corniculate, cuneiform, and thyroid. Now moving on to the pharyngeal pause derivatives. The easy mnemonics to remember all the pharyngeal pause derivatives include Mammy's fruit makes pretty enthralling snack party, in which the derivatives of first pharyngeal pause include mastoid ear cells, middle ear cavity, and eustachian tube. And for the derivatives of the second pharyngeal pause, it is epithelial lining of the palatine tonsil, and from the dorsal wings of the third pharyngeal pause, inferior parathyroids are derived, and from the ventral wings of the third pharyngeal pause, thymus is derived. And from the dorsal wings of the fourth pharyngeal pause, superior parathyroids are derived, and from the ventral wings of the fourth pharyngeal pause, ultimo pharyngeal bodies are derived, which later becomes the parafollicular or C cells of the thyroid. Thank you.